The wind howled through the narrow streets of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, as sleet fell like shards of glass against the dim glow of the street lamps. Christmas lights flickered weakly in the storm, half frozen, clinging to rooftops like weary sentinels of cheer that had long since faded. Sergeant Michael Ramirez pulled his wool coat tighter around his shoulders and lowered the brim of his army-issued cap. His boots, worn from years of service and 3 deployments, splashed through icy puddles as he made his way down the block. The world felt still, almost respectfully so, on this solemn night. He had just left the VFW hall where a small ceremony had been held for veterans lost in battle. Only a dozen people had shown up, most of them older than the medals they wore. They spoke in low tones, trading memories, laughter, and grief like fragile heirlooms. For Michael, it wasn't just about remembrance. It was about guilt. He had made it home. They hadn't. His hands were still cold despite the gloves. It wasn't just the temperature, there was something else. A kind of emptiness that had settled in his bones since his return, like the war had left a hollow echo inside him. He walked with no destination in mind. Walking helped him think. Or at least kept the ghosts quieter. As he passed the shuttered storefront of Joe's Diner, something caught his eye. At first, it looked like a pile of rags left behind by a careless traveler. But it moved. Just barely. He stopped. A small figure was curled on the wooden bench outside the diner, partially hidden behind a trash can. The streetlight flickered above him, casting a pale gold halo on the child's face. Michael's eyes narrowed. It was a boy. 10, maybe 11. No shoes. Toes raw and red, curled against the wind. A backpack lay beside him, soaked through. His arms were wrapped around his thin torso, trembling. Michael's breath caught. He approached slowly, boots crunching softly on the ice. "Hey there, kid," he said gently. "You okay?" The boy flinched, his eyes snapping open. For a moment, he looked ready to run. But then his gaze met Michael's, and something shifted. There was fear in those eyes, but also exhaustion, the kind that didn't belong in a child. His lips parted, but no words came out. Just a tiny puff of white breath in the cold air. Michael crouched down, lowering himself to eye level. "It's freezing out here." "What are you doing?" The boy blinked. "I was just resting. My mom said to wait here." His voice was hoarse, brittle. "She went to try and get gas money." Michael scanned the street. No sign of anyone else. He looked back at the boy. "Where are your shoes?" The boy glanced down like he hadn't even noticed. "They got wet. I left them in the car. They froze." A knot twisted in Michael's chest. He hadn't felt this particular kind of pain since Afghanistan. When he saw kids barefoot in the mountains, offering dusty hands in exchange for a piece of bread or a bottle of water. And now, in the heart of his own country, he was staring into eyes that looked just as desperate. "You're not safe out here," Michael said. "Come with me. There's a gas station across the street. We'll warm up. I'll get you something to eat. Deal?" The boy hesitated. "My mom said not to talk to strangers." Michael gave a small smile and reached into his coat, pulling out his Army ID. "Sergeant Ramirez. U.S. Army, retired. You're smart to be careful. But I promise, I'm one of the good guys." The boy studied the card, then looked up. Something about Michael's voice, the steadiness in it, seemed to ease the tension in his shoulders. "Okay," he whispered. Michael held out a gloved hand. The boy took it. The warmth of that tiny hand hit Michael like a surge of electricity, more emotion than heat. It was fragile, bony, ice-cold. He gently guided the boy across the street, shielding him from the wind with his own body. The lights of the 24-hour convenience store cast a yellow glow, buzzing faintly like tired bees. Inside, the air was dry and warm, tinged with the scent of old coffee and fried snacks. Michael led the boy to a booth near the back and gestured for him to sit. He peeled off his coat and draped it over the boy's shoulders before making his way to the counter. "Hot chocolate," he said to the clerk, "extra whipped cream. And give me whatever sandwich is warmest back there. Oh, and those socks by the register. 2 pairs." The clerk, a teenager with purple hair and earbuds hanging around his neck, raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. Michael returned to the booth with the food, setting it gently in front of the boy. The boy stared at it for a moment as if unsure whether it was real. Michael nodded. "Go on. Eat." He didn't have to say it twice. The boy devoured the sandwich like someone who hadn't had a proper meal in days. Crumbs fell to the table. The whipped cream melted on his upper lip, and for a moment, he smiled. Michael watched him, silent, heart heavy and full at once. He didn't know it yet, but this moment, this one, simple act, would echo far beyond this stormy night. The gas station was quiet, save for the occasional hum of the refrigerator and the low hiss of the coffee machine in the corner. Outside, the storm continued to lash against the windows, but inside, a small bubble of warmth held the world at bay. The boy, Jaden, as he would soon share, sat hunched over his sandwich, chewing with the kind of urgency that told Michael it had been far too long since his last proper meal. Michael sat across from him, hands wrapped around a paper cup of black coffee, watching quietly. He didn't speak right away. Years of military service had taught him the value of silence, especially when someone was on the edge of trust. You waited. You let them come to you. And eventually, they would. Jaden wiped his mouth with the back of his sleeve and glanced up at Michael, unsure, as if expecting to be told to leave now that the food was gone. Michael didn't move. He just took a sip of coffee and gave the boy a small, reassuring nod. "My mom and I been sleepin' in the car," Jaden said suddenly, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's not so bad. We got a blanket. She parks near the church where it's kinda safe." Michael nodded. "You've been out here long?" Jaden shrugged. "Few weeks, maybe. We had to leave real fast. My stepdad," he trailed off, eyes shifting to the window, where the wind painted streaks of ice across the glass. "He wasn't nice." Michael's grip on the cup tightened slightly. "Did he hurt you?" Jaden didn't answer directly. Instead, he pulled up his sleeve just a little, revealing a faint bruise, yellowing at the edges, blooming like a forgotten sunset. Michael's jaw clenched. "My mom didn't want to go at first. Said we had nowhere to go. But I told her I didn't care. I didn't want her getting hit no more." Michael leaned forward, his voice low but steady. "You did the right thing. You protected her. That takes guts." Jaden's eyes flickered to him, searching his face for sincerity. Whatever he saw must have been enough, because he nodded slowly, almost proudly. "She's real smart," he said. "Used to be a nurse before all that. She's trying to find work again, but it's hard when you don't got an address or a phone or anything." Michael felt something heavy settle in his chest. He had seen this before, different names, different faces, same pain. Families broken not by lack of love, but by the hard weight of circumstance, by the systems that failed them one by one. He reached into the plastic bag beside him and pulled out the socks. "Here," he said, sliding them across the table. "These'll keep your feet warm. They're thick. I wore the same kind in the mountains overseas." Jaden's eyes widened as he took them, like someone had handed him gold. "Thanks." Michael nodded, his voice a bit rough. "No problem." For a moment, the storm outside faded into nothing, as if the world was holding its breath for this quiet connection between a tired man and a braver-than-he-knew boy. Jaden was finishing the last of his hot chocolate when Michael took out his phone and stared at it for a moment, thumb hovering over the screen. He wasn't sure what he was looking for, not exactly. He had spent years learning to respond to crises with order, with strategy, with action, but this felt different. This wasn't a battlefield. There were no orders to follow. Just a kid who reminded him a little too much of someone he used to be. He scrolled through his contacts until he landed on a name, Thompson, Eli. The name was saved under a photo of two grinning soldiers in desert camo, arms slung around each other, sunburned and alive. Eli had been his bunkmate in Kandahar, the kind of guy who could make a joke out of anything, even incoming mortar fire. After retiring, Eli had moved back to the East Coast and started something rare, a transitional shelter not just for veterans, but for veterans with families. The kind of place that didn't ask too many questions and didn't need you to be perfect to deserve help. Michael pressed call. The phone rang twice before Eli picked up. Mike? Man, it's been a minute. Michael let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Eli. You still running that place in Reading? Sure am. Full house most nights. Why, what's up? I've got a kid here. 10 years old. With his mom. They've been living in their car. I don't know how long. She's out somewhere, probably looking for help. The boy, he's freezing. Hungry. No shoes. Eli didn't hesitate. We've got 2 cots free. Bring them tonight if you can. No red tape. Michael looked at Jaden, who was gently peeling the wrapper off a chocolate chip cookie like it was a fragile treasure. Thanks, brother. You got it. After ending the call, Michael turned back to Jaden. We're going on a little ride, he said. Jaden looked up, nervous. What about my mom? We'll find her. You said she was nearby, right? Looking for gas money? Jaden nodded. She said she was going to the grocery store. Sometimes they let her ask people near the exit. Michael stood, pulling his coat back on. Let's go get her. The streets were still glazed with ice, but Michael drove slow, headlights sweeping across empty sidewalks and shuttered storefronts. They spotted her just outside a dollar market, her face weary and wind-bitten, holding a cardboard sign that simply read "Need help." Anything. When she saw Jaden wave through the car window, she dropped the sign and ran to them. Michael got out and introduced himself. She hesitated, unsure whether to trust a stranger in a military coat, but Jaden quickly told her about the food, the warmth, the kindness. And something softened in her. She didn't cry, though her eyes said she wanted to. They drove in silence to the shelter, headlights slicing through the storm. Michael parked out front and turned to Jaden. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small, something old. His army pin, silver, scuffed, shaped like a shield with an eagle perched at the top. He'd carried it for years, through 2 tours and every ceremony since. He held it out to Jaden. This is for you, he said. Not because you need to be a soldier. But because you already are. You protected your mom. You stayed strong. That's what this pin means to me. Jaden took it carefully, his eyes wide, lips parted, like he couldn't believe someone was trusting him with something so important. He didn't say anything, just clutched it tightly in his small hand, holding it against his chest as if it had weight far beyond its size. The following morning, after her first restful sleep in weeks, Jaden's mother sat on a narrow cot in the quiet corner of the shelter, her son still curled up beside her. She held a borrowed phone, one of the staff had offered it to her just to check in with the outside world, and stared at the small screen for a long time. Her hands trembled slightly, not from the cold this time, but from something else she hadn't felt in a while, hope. She opened the Notes app and began to type. Last night, a soldier saved my son. He didn't kick down a door or fire a weapon. He just showed up, with a sandwich, a pair of socks, and a kind heart. We were alone, living out of our car in the middle of a storm, and I left my son outside a diner so I could go beg strangers for gas money. I came back thinking I might find him sick or scared. Instead, I found him warm, fed, and smiling in the back of a car driven by a man who wore a veteran's coat and eyes that had clearly seen too much. This man, this stranger, didn't ask for anything. He just helped. And then he gave my son his army pin and said, "You're a soldier too." She paused, wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her borrowed sweatshirt. The room was quiet, the only sound the distant hum of the heater and the soft, rhythmic breathing of her son. She finished the message. "Whoever you are, Sergeant Ramirez, thank you. You reminded me what it means to serve, not just a country, but each other. I don't know how to repay you, so I'm sharing this story, hoping the world hears it." Not all heroes wear uniforms. But this one did. She posted the message on a local Facebook community page and then again on her old Twitter account, tagging the army, the local news station, and using the hashtag one act of kindness. She didn't expect anything to come of it. Just needed someone. Anyone, to know. But within hours, the post was shared. First, a few friends from her past, who hadn't heard from her in years, commented with shock and concern. Then strangers began to share it, tagging their friends and saying things like, "This is what real America looks like," and "We need more people like this." By nightfall, the post had made its way to a national veterans group online. By morning, it had reached over 1 million views. News outlets began contacting the shelter, asking to speak to the family, asking who the soldier was. Donations began to flood the shelter's website, $5 here, $50 there, even corporate sponsors reaching out asking how they could help. Volunteers signed up in record numbers, and people across the country posted their own stories of times when a stranger's kindness changed everything. Teachers used the story in their classrooms. Churches read it aloud during Sunday service. A high school in Iowa started a fundraiser they called Operation Kindness to support local shelters. And everywhere, people began passing it on, whispering or posting or texting the words that had become a sort of quiet anthem. One nation. One army. One act of kindness. The sun cast a warm golden hue over the field as a sea of folding chairs filled up row by row, the soft rustle of flags blending with the gentle hum of a gathering crowd. It was the 4th of July in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, a town known more for quiet winters and Amish markets than national headlines. But today felt different. Something had changed. Something had bloomed from a single, simple night, and it had brought people from blocks, cities, even states away. Red, white, and blue bunting waved gently from the edges of the stage. Children clutched tiny flags in sticky hands, the scent of barbecue drifting on the breeze. The mayor stood by the podium with his speech folded in his hand, flanked by veterans in dress uniforms and local leaders. But all eyes were on the small boy standing backstage, his pressed shirt just a size too big, his dark hair combed neatly to one side, and his fingers curled around a small, worn silver army pin. Jaden. He had grown in the months since that stormy December night, just a few inches taller, but far steadier on his feet. His eyes held something they hadn't before, assurance, even strength. His mother stood nearby, dressed in a borrowed sundress, beaming with a quiet pride that needed no words. The shelter had helped them find an apartment. She was working part-time again as a nurse's assistant. They had a mailing address now. Jaden had started school. A real school, with his own desk and backpack and friends. When the mayor motioned for him to come forward, Jaden walked slowly to the podium. The crowd hushed. He was small in front of the microphone, the top of his head barely reaching it, but a staff member quickly adjusted it to his height. For a moment, he stood silently, taking it all in, the people, the waving flags, the fluttering silence. He cleared his throat, the army pin still clutched tightly in his hand. "My name is Jaden," he began, voice soft but steady. "You don't know me, but maybe you heard my story. A few months ago, I was cold. I was hungry. Me and my mom didn't have a home. I didn't think anybody cared." He looked down briefly, then back up, eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on a familiar figure near the front. Michael Ramirez stood tall, still wearing the same army coat, though today his face showed something new. Awe, maybe. Humility. He had tried to refuse all the attention that followed, had told reporters he wasn't a hero, just a man doing what was right. But people had kept showing up, not for his sake, but for what he represented. Jaden raised the pin slightly for all to see. One night, a man stopped for me. He didn't just give me food or a ride, he made me feel seen. He gave me this pin. He said I was a soldier too. That I had protected my mom, and that's what being strong looks like. The crowd was silent, some wiping tears, some placing hands over hearts. Jaden continued. I think America isn't just a country. It's people. It's neighbors. It's someone stopping in the cold to say, you matter. And if one act of kindness can help one person, maybe a lot of us can help a lot more. He stepped back from the microphone to a swell of applause that rose like a wave, not loud and wild, but steady and deep, like a promise. Behind him, the flag rippled gently in the summer wind.